Hello, my name is Sara Pruiksma. I'm an artist living in a small rural river town named Queens. It's just south of Albany. My husband and I bought our home there in 2017, and one of the main attractions to us to the area was the architecture. Um, just after we bought our home, we learned that our house was on the state and national register of historic places. And that was really exciting and fascinating to me as a first-time homeowner. I felt like I was investing in history. So once we bought our house, I began looking at our house and the whole area with new eyes and an even greater sense of appreciation. The Queens Landing Historic District is full of just these wonderful time capsules of buildings, and I wanted to pay tribute to them through my work. So what I noticed from the time that my husband and I bought our house in 2017 and the time that I started working on this project was that the architectural landscape of this little small area, the hamlet, was changing drastically. There were so many homes that were being demolished. So these beautiful one-off historical homes were just gone. In particular, this piece here, "And One Day You Were No Longer There," is directly about that. My husband and I would, take our walks down to the river, and we would always pause and we'd stop and look at these three buildings. They were rather dilapidated, they needed a lot of love, but they were still really interesting and beautiful. And one day on our walk down to the river, they were just gone. They were flattened, there was nothing there, and we found that really alarming. There were several other homes just in this small amount of time that were just gone, and it was a real shame. So by doing these pieces, I wanted to pay tribute to how important they are, and then once they are lost, they're gone forever. This piece up here, the story of three sisters, is the story of these three sister houses that were identical, and a fire broke out in the middle house. My husband and I were outside painting furniture, and then all of a sudden we hear screams. We saw people running up the road. It was really traumatic. And that left quite an impression on us. And we saw the house in the middle being torn down. Now there's only one of these sister houses remaining. It's just really something to see. And when I witnessed this one house in particular go up in flames, this was just across the street from us. Witnessed it go up in flames. We watched it be torn down with all this huge equipment. I began to think about houses as having their own life cycle. So the houses have like their own personality and character. They have sort of a beginning, middle, and end. Some houses and buildings are able to be rehabbed, and people, take care of them. They rehab them, and other times they're just demolished. So I began to think about these houses as, really having these unique stories to tell, and that for me is part of why I wanted to do these works in the way that I'm doing them. So I knew early on that having the precision in getting the perspective down and getting all the angles just wasn't my thing. I really wasn't interested in all of that precision, but I still wanted to capture the character and the architectural details. So I had to learn to allow myself to use transfer paper, which in some ways seemed like a cop-out, but it was really just a tool for me to expedite the process and to work with what I was really interested in. So through the transfer paper, I was able to use the photographs that I had been collecting for months of the area, and I used the transfer paper to draw what I really was interested in. And the transfer paper allowed me to do almost like a sketch of each of these houses. And I was able to capture the personality, the just sort of raw character of these houses. And the drawings are on tissue paper, which is really important. It was important for me to not have these drawings be on Strathmore paper. So it wasn't about them being drawings themselves. I wanted uh, the material that they're drawn on to actually say something. And the tissue paper for me is just that. So the tissue paper is a metaphor for these pieces being ephemeral. When they're not framed, I mean, they're very light, they're delicate, but they're also pretty resilient in an odd sort of juxtaposition. The tissue paper as a metaphor can be recycled, it can be reused, and it can also be thrown out. So just in the way that I'm thinking about these houses, the tissue paper was acting as this sort of conceptual standing point. Also, they're blue, and that is a very, it's certainly a very profound decision, and I wanted them to have the, I wanted them to be reminiscent of blueprints. So many of these houses were built before the process of blueprints was invented in 1842. So there are no real documentation of these footprints, the layouts, the architectural curiosities of these buildings. That just doesn't exist. So I really wanted the process and the concept to merge. And it was a really rewarding project. I'm still continuing to work in this way, and it's something that I'm enjoying doing. So I hope you enjoy seeing these pieces in the show.